Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Hey, warm and brotherly low, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Visa Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you as we're going to be joined in a few minutes by Tristan Freeman, who does such great work over at Boston Brackets, taking a look at this wonderful game of college basketball that we all know and love. We're going to get his thoughts on the ACC-SEC Challenge, as I've talked a lot about the SEC and their triumphs. Well, he covers the ACC, and we're going to talk about what this means for the ACC, how rough it was for them, where they go moving forward. We're going to talk about some of the surprise teams in college basketball as well. We'll dive into a few games for Tuesday along the way, and then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Monday. A small one, but a fun one. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
One of the worst cover 8 teams in all of college basketball this year has been the Quakers of Penn, but they were able to get a cover against VCU. So yay, verily, they are now 2-8 against the spread. Not necessarily that they played the world's greatest game or anything like that, but line was right around about 23.5. They lose 66-47 as for Penn, absolutely nothing doing on offense on this one. 5 of 27 from three-point range, but VCU just 6 of 25 from three-point range. VCU does win the turnover battle though, 16-10, and they won the rebound battle by a count of 45-29 as Joe Bamisile was able to supply the team with 23 points, 10 rebounds. He also had 10 boards out of Jack Clark as well. So nice win, but no cover on that one. The big game of the night was out there in the Big Ten, and Minnesota now 1-8-2 against the spread. They fall to Indiana 82-67. A Minnesota team has been playing quite slowly this year, but they allowed Indiana to shoot 56.5% from the floor. You have Malik Renew supply the team with 16.7 boards, Umar Ballo 18.7 boards of his own, and then off the bench, Cannon Carlisle and Bryson Tucker combined for 30 points. As for Minnesota, you did have Dawson Garcia throwing their 22 points, and really not a whole heck of a lot from anyone else. Hofstra has been an interesting team thus far this season, and they got the job done against Norfolk State, this by a count of 80-67, as Hofstra has been a little bit underwhelming on offense thus far this season, but not on this night. 11 of 22 from three-point range. They lose the turnover battle 15-10, but they won the rebound battle 28-20 as well. Gene Amarujian, 19 points, 7 boards, 6 assists. He was able to power the team to victory, and for Norfolk State, this has been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball thus far this season as well, so they've been an interesting story on that front. What else has been interesting has been taking a look at this Baylor team, who's now 7-2 to the over. They win, they cover against Abilene Christian, 88-57 the final is. For Baylor, they shoot 59.5% from the floor, 18 points out of Jaden Nunn. They got back VJ Edgecombe after he missed the previous game, 14 points, 6 boards, 4 steals, 3 assists, and for Abilene Christian, they go 2 of 14 from three-point range. They lost the turnover battle 10-9. They lost the rebound battle 37-28. So some good thorough domination there, and good thorough domination from South Carolina State as they take down Charleston Southern, this by a count of 82-63, as South Carolina State's been able to cover some numbers themselves as they were able to go just 2 of 20 from three-point range, but the way that they got the job done, they shot their free throws better. Charleston Southern 17 of 29 at the charity stripe, 18 of 25 for South Carolina State, and oh, by the way, Charleston Southern, they lose that turnover battle by a count of 17-5. Hard to be able to win a lot of games that way. And then you had 34 big points out of Drayton Jones for South Carolina State as well. If you're looking trend-wise at what we've been getting in college basketball, overall, the overs still have the lead on the unders, 775 overs to 761 unders, but that's very much tightened up ever since the first week or two of the season. Underdogs still having themselves a nice year, 790, 744, and 23 against the spread, so hitting at a 51% clip. But if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, it's been all about the favorites, 145, 133, and 4 against the spread, with overs hitting at a 50% clip, 140 overs to 137 under. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball trend-wise, and that's what we got on a very brief Monday in college basketball. So short first segment here, but we're going to have a great rest of the podcast as we've got plenty of games for Tuesday, and we've got a great chat coming up next with our good friend Tristan Freeman right here on Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. And we're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got Tristan Freeman aboard. He does such great work over at Boston Brackets. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. And this man is a little bit all over the place, as I know that he's doing a rock solid job over there with Sleepers Media from time to time. You're able to catch him occasionally over at the Field of 68 doing some of their newsletter work and so much more. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Hoops351. And Tristan, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Greg. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Tristan. And Tristan, we have to recap what we saw last week in college basketball, as we saw a lot of those conference challenges with the Big East versus Big 12 challenge, and then obviously the ACC versus SEC challenge. And I think that you, much like myself, expected the SEC to win that challenge. I just didn't see it going 14-2, and just the absolute bludgeonings that we saw as well. I want to get your thoughts here because I know that you do a lot of work covering Pittsburgh, doing a lot of coverage of the ACC in general, and this just simply was not a good look for the conference.
Yeah, and as you said, not only was it just a beatdown total-wise, but many of the games weren't even competitive for the ACC sides. I mean, looking at the bottom results, you had teams like Boston College get blown out. You know, one of the potential contenders, Pittsburgh, they lose them by 33 points. Just a combination of the fact that the SEC got many quad 1, quad 2 wins and then improved their metrics by outside of, Duke and Clemson, two likely NCAA tournament teams, the ACC got nothing out of it. And we're a couple of weeks away from just nothing but league play, and time's running out for them to get signature wins.
Yep, it certainly is. And when it comes to the ACC, certainly Duke has been looking very rock solid for the conference. They were able to get that win over Auburn. And can we start to make the case that perhaps Clemson is that number 2 team in the conference? Because with North Carolina, they lose that game at home against Alabama. And maybe it's just me, but for North Carolina, their second halves have been fine. It feels like they just have not been able to get it going in the first half of any of their games this year, though.
Yeah, I mean, they've been in rock fights in just about any game against a decent team. Georgia Tech, mind you, was a team that was missing 2 of their key players as well. And that was a home game that ultimately went down to the wire. It's just hard to see where the Tar Heels are going to go without any legitimate front court play. You're basically having Ben Allen Lubin play under 20 minutes, not having an impact. Kate Tyson giving you nothing. Jalen Withers, Jalen Washington, just pretty much hoping that the backcourt alone can save you. And it's going to make them, essentially a jump shooting kind of team. And there'll be times where it works, but then there's going to be plenty of other times where they're going to struggle. And we're kind of at the point where we're going to have to start asking, are we 100% certain they're a tournament team? Because a win over Dayton is fine, but there's not really much other work they can do unless they can find a way to beat Florida and UCLA in the next couple weeks.
Yep, and as we know, if it wasn't for the fact that Nate Santos had his foot on the line, who knows what happens in that game as well. So it has been very much a less than savory year thus far for North Carolina. Joining me on the show, we do have Tristan Freeman, who does amazing work over at Boston Brackets, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and certainly a lot of takeaways from the ACC-SEC challenge. But that said, in terms of the Big East versus Big 12 challenge, what did you make out of that? Because the Big East came in very bad footing. We saw UConn lose 3 games in Maui. We saw everything that was going down with Providence, but Providence takes down BYU. Seton Hall has been, well, not great to say the least, but I mean, for the Big East, I feel like it's been very surprising what we've seen out of the conference this year, and that it's feels like it's just a very open conference this year, with perhaps Marquette and UConn still being those top teams. But Creighton, they've been up and down. They've been dealing with a bunch of injuries with Pops Isaacs being out. And these teams that we thought were going to be cellar dwellers in DePaul and Georgetown, they've been pleasant surprises this far.
If nothing else, compared to the ACC, the Big 12 got the wins it needed to just stay viable. I mean, Creighton beating Kansas was a massive upset for them, although they will be without Pop Isaacs going forward. UConn getting back on track. And then Villanova, that was a nice win for them at home over a ranked Cincinnati team. I thought for the Big East to sort of guarantee that they can get 3+ bids, needed the results that they needed. And as of right now, the only team that looks, sort of soulless or done is Seton Hall, who lost to Oklahoma State in the battle of the worst of the leagues. But outside of them, as you mentioned, the other teams are at least viable, and that's all you can ask for. We'll see what happens when they start to face each other, but these teams are getting healthy and playing well, and it'll come down to what happens with UConn. But I do think the Big East had a successful weeks overall.
Yep, I think so as well. And with the Big East, I think that this is just a very jumbled up conference. I don't know how you view this conference, but I think that it's just much more open than what we've seen in past years as well, because it used to be a foregone conclusion prior to the rise of UConn that Villanova was going to overrun the conference. Last few seasons, it's been UConn. This year, I just feel like there's many more teams that are much more viable. You don't have as much of a floor because DePaul and Georgetown look so much better, but at the same time, the dominant teams like UConn, like Marquette, I haven't necessarily seen what I'd love to see out of them with Marquette. Certainly, they've got some quality wins, but we did see what happened against Iowa State a few nights ago, and that's a little bit of a concern as well.
Yeah, although I will say there's nothing more forgivable than losing that Hilton Coliseum at Iowa State. So if that's the worst that Marquette's going to look, they're still going to be a quality team, and I think they're right now the clear favorite in the Big East, but I do believe that UConn's starting to get right back on track. And the other teams, just overall, they're just going to be competitive. There won't be a lot of easy wins in league play outside of maybe Seton Hall. And it's good and bad, because if Georgetown and DePaul can pull off some upsets, right now they're not tournament teams, but if they're feisty, they could potentially accidentally drag some downwards. It'll be interesting to see how many bids this league can get, whether it's going to be more than 3 or potentially 4 or 5, because obviously the SEC and Big 12 is going to take a lot. But with the ACC struggling as it is, then it is an opportunity for the Big East to sort of get more bids and sort of have more teams that can be a threat come March.
Yep, absolutely. That is going to be a fun conference to be watching in general, and it's going to be fun to see what we get out there at MSG on Tuesday as well. As Tristan Freeman, who does such great work over at Boston Brackets, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Tristan, I know that you love the ACC, but if Miami knocks off Tennessee, I think that we'd both be very, very surprised there. But what I think is going to be so interesting is that we've been talking so much about the SEC, and right now, the way that I look at the SEC, Arkansas is one of the lesser teams in the conference, and the way that I look at the Big Ten, right now, Michigan is one of those top teams in the Big Ten. How do you size up this matchup that we're going to be seeing Tuesday night between Michigan and Arkansas? Because I think that this is a big game for both of these teams, and for the Big Ten, I'm sure that they are hoping dearly that Michigan can win this game, because if Arkansas gets the job done, I think that it really shows just how deep the SEC is, because right now, if I were to evaluate Arkansas, I put them in the bottom half of that conference with the way that everyone has stepped up, including Missouri, with that big one on Sunday against Kansas.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go a step further, I'm not sure if we've had a single impressive moment from Arkansas outside of, beating Maryland Eastern Shore by 100. They barely survived Texas San Antonio. They were down at the half to them. They beat Miami on the road, which any other time is good, but Miami may also just be doomed to finish in the bottom tier of the ACC, because they've lost, I believe, 6 straight. So this is probably the next best test for them after the Thanksgiving matchup with Illinois. Michigan has definitely played above expectations. The front court is going to be a big matchup for Arkansas, because their front court's barely been healthy. and Jonas Adu and Trevon Brazile, and they're going to have to go up against Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden, who's become one of the better tandems in the country. This is a game where if you're Arkansas and you're, going to be a good SEC team, you're going to have to find a way to be at least competitive. But if Michigan can find a way to win this one handily, as you said, it'll be good for the Big Ten overall, but it might give a hint to where Arkansas might not just be a bottom half team. They might be in the bottom 3 or 4, because so far, everyone outside of South Carolina has had impressive moments in the SEC play, and Arkansas just really hasn't.
No, they certainly have not, and this is going to be a fun one to take a look at for Tuesday, and we've got a few fun games that are going to be coming up for Tuesday as well, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well in terms of the Rhode Island versus Brown matchup, because I know that you do a little bit of work in the A-10, looking at Duquesne, who's been, well, let's call it what it is. It's been a rough year for Duquesne, but Rhode Island has been one of the biggest surprise teams in all of college basketball. Just over the weekend, knocked off Providence. Now they go on the road against Brown. How do you take a look at both this matchup and this Rhode Island team in general? One that out there in the Atlantic 10, I thought it was going to be VCU and Dayton when it was all said and done. Not really much to say otherwise right now, but I think that Rhode Island could be an interesting mixer and shaker in that conference.
One of their big transfers was Sebastian Thomas, who originally played for them and sort of didn't do as much, but then he became a star at Albany, transferred back. I was sort of wait and see, but I think we've seen enough. He's been absolutely fantastic for them, averaging 17 and 7 for them. And when you consider the fact that David Green and Jaden House were returning double-digit scores for them, they clearly had the pieces to be competitive. They're one of the top scoring teams in the country. And, Archie Miller, he is a good coach. And it took him a minute to sort of get the Rams back on track. But with Thomas looking like A-10 Player of the Year contender, they should be up there in the top tier with VCU, Dayton, and Loyola Chicago. And again, they're unbeaten. They got a nice win over Providence. They don't really have much else to work with. But if they keep winning, then at some point we're going to have to look at them as being a potential tournament team.
Yeah, absolutely. This Rhode Island team has been very impressive, and credit to Brown. They've lost Nana Wusu-Nane, their top rebounder, prior to the start of the season. They've been very rock solid on both the offensive and defensive side of things as well. Though Rubber is going to be meeting the road in this one. They haven't necessarily played the toughest of competition quite yet. And with regards to what we do have for Tuesday, just throw at you a pair of games I think are going to be intriguing. Anything else that you're going to be looking at? Because we've got some Big Ten conference play, which is always very interesting to be saying in the month of early December. I know that we've got a few ACC teams that are going to be in action. Anything else that you take a look at and you're really going to be keeping your eyes on?
You mentioned Big Ten play. Penn State and Rutgers is going to be very interesting because Penn State, coming off the big win over Purdue, has now caught people's eyes that they're actually be a genuine tournament team led by Ace Baldwin. But he's going to have to go up against a dynamic freshman duo of Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, who have been as good as advertised. If you're Rutgers, you've looked the most impressive in losses in the Players Era tournament, and you already have a loss to Kennesaw State. You're going to have to win games like this if you're truly a tournament team. And that'll be one that under the radar that I'm very much interested in. And then, Providence coming off the loss to Rhode Island. Yeah, we understand Rhode Island is good, so it's not the worst loss in the world. But now you're playing at DePaul. And, DePaul is getting a lot of respect. They've been solid. They lost to their only good opponent, Texas Tech. But I think people were interested in what Chris Holtman has up his sleeve. And if you're Providence, you have Bryce Hopkins back. If you want to be a tournament team, you have to find a way to win this game. And if DePaul does find a way to win this game, then I think you could truly say that they've arrived in the Big East as a team to take serious.
Yep, absolutely. We've got ourselves a lot of good action for Tuesday. A little bit more of a slow week in college basketball this week with finals week, but a man that never stops. It's always finals week for him. He's always cramming. He's always doing his best to be able to get things right on the college basketball front. That'd be you, Tristan. You do such amazing work. Taking a look at this great sport, so let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yes, sir. You can follow me at HoopsNut351 on Twitter X, and also follow at Bustin' Brackets. And we're getting ready to prepare for the epic Saturday slate with a lot of quality matchups, and stay tuned. We'll be previewing just about all of them.
Absolutely. And our good friend Tristan. He does an amazing job of being able to take a look at it all every single time he joins me, lends such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Tristan for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VC Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis out of a game on the betting board for this College Basketball Tuesday as we eat some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Always love having Tristan Freeman aboard. He does such great work over at Bustin' Brackets, taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. Did so once again today, so a big thanks to Tristan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNN_D1. Going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first, and then the extra games. These are involving games in the smaller conferences, and the smaller conferences include the Atlantic Sun, the MEAC. You've got the Southland in there, the America East. Those are going to be the games. They're going to be at the bottom. So how about if we do get things started with 601, 602 on the card? It is North Dakota State. They're on the road. They're facing off against Butler, and Butler does find themselves as a 13-point favorite in your total on this game between 142.5 to a 143. And with Butler, I did make them a big enough favorite to be able to lay it in this spot. I set them as a 16.5 point favorite. I've been liking what I've been seeing on this Butler team recently. Recognize that they got blowtorched by Houston, but I find absolutely no shame in that. It's a Butler team that was able to take down Mississippi State about a week or so ago, and for North Dakota State, the backcourt is rock solid. You've got Trakari White, who's able to supply the team with 17 points per contest, and you're also getting back 6'10" Jackson Moniz, who's got really good versatility. He's shooting north of 40% from 3. At 6'10", he's able to supply the team with 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists per game. But it's, again, a North Dakota State team that, in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, they're just one of the least savory teams in all of college basketball. North Dakota State is never really a team that's going to push a bunch of tempo or anything like that. They're about 280th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You've got a Butler team that, it's not like they're shy of running, but it's not like they're going to just completely jam it down your throat or anything like that. But Butler right now 14th in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, shooting north of 40% from three-point range, both at home and on the road. And North Dakota State, to their credit, they've been able to do a better job of being able to guard the arc this season. Last year, they were allowing opponents to shoot 36.8% from 3. This year, it's 26.8%. I think that that's going to be drying up quite a bit in this situation. You do have Noah Fredersen down low, who's able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, also for North Dakota State, but he's been dealing with a little bit of injury to Javius Miller, who's been giving the team 10 points per contest. Should be good to go in this one, but on the flip side for Butler, they returned their top 2 scorers from a season ago, Pierre Brooks along with Jamal Telford. These 2 guys have been able to supply you with a combined 30 points per game. They're combined shoot about 30% from 3. And Patrick McCaffrey, he has come in, he shot 49% from 3. That'll dry up a little bit, but with Andre Screen, him being able to supply for this team down low, this being a North Dakota State team that is very vulnerable in the post and a team that's given up 70-plus points in 3 of their last 5 games, and their offense is ascending. For North Dakota State, they've gotten to at least 73 each of their last 5 games. Butler held down in their last game, but really past that, they've been a pretty nice wagon with regards to their offense. Do you think they get a nice high-scoring up-and-down game? So did set my total at 148.5. I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 16 with Butler. 603, 604 on the betting board. This is a neutral court game between Miami and Tennessee. This will be happening out there at MSG, and right now with Miami, they are underdogs of 17 points. Total on this game is 145. I haven't written it up yet, but I might, when it's all said and done, write up the over in this game, just because you do have a Miami team that they've been rock solid with their offense. Like, you can say what you want about this Miami team being an abject disaster thus far this season, and boy, have they been an abject disaster thus far this season, and fully recognize that Saturday was less than savory in terms of the offense, but this is still a Miami team that, in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, is one of the better teams in all of college basketball. Matthew Cleveland hasn't even gotten going too much as well. He's only been able to give the team about 9 to 10 points per contest after last year he was supplying the team with more like 13 points per game, but for Miami, 19th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And here's a well-kept secret with Tennessee. This is one of the best offenses in all of college basketball. How about third in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis? Now, when you go to MSG, it always feels like in these games involving college basketball teams that these teams, they do crater a little bit with regards to their shooting, but Chaz Lanier, he's just a bucket getter. He's been able to get for this team 19 points per contest. For Tennessee, they're shooting 37.5% from three. I can see a little bit of a fall off there, but a lot of their offense has just been good, clean buckets inside and just really good, clean offense being run by Zakai Ziegler, who's right now giving out just under 8 assists per contest. Top 5 player in all of college basketball in terms of assists per game. And Igor Milicic at 6'10" has been a great fit for this team. 7 boards, 12.5 points per game, shooting about 32% from three-point range. Would like to see that go up just a little bit, but you've got a lot of contributors for this team. Even with Cameron Carr going down, you still have had a lot of guys step in, give you some three-point shooting, like Jalen Gainey has been able to shoot 37% from the outside, but for Miami, I do think that Brandon Johnson going to be able to stay lively in terms of being able to guard in terms of both the post and just be able to lend a little bit of versatility. 10 points per contest, shooting about 32% from three-point range at 6'8", has come in from East Carolina, has been pretty rock solid. Miami, to their credit, they don't turn the ball over a lot. They're only turning the ball over about 9.5 times per game. They shoot over 80% at the free throw line, and with Lincoln being able to give you 6 rebounds per game, I think the Miami does just enough to be able to hold in there. At 17 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points, and then in on the over as well. Semi-total 154.5. 605, 606 on the betting board. St. Joe's hopes to not be average Joe's. They play host to Charleston, and Charleston does find themselves as a 7 to 7.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 151 to 151.5. Semi-line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Charleston. It's a Charleston unit that has been very much playing an up-tempo brand of basketball outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That's been a little bit less than tremendous for them, but really ever since they got bludgeoned by Rhode Island, they've been able to do a much better job of being able to get up off the mat. You still have a guy in Ante Bodicevic who's been able to give you 19.5 points per game. I love his overall game, being able to give you 9 boards and shoot north of 44% from three-point range. Charleston needs to clean up the turnovers. They are turning the ball over about 14 times per contest. St. Joe's, they do an okay job of generating turnovers. Not great, not terrible. You've had Eric Reynolds and Xavier Brown who have been able to combine for a little bit over 30 points per contest, but this St. Joe's team has only been able to shoot about 33% from three-point range. Thought that you would get a little bit more down low from the team, as well as Justice Ajabor comes over from Harvard. He was a good rebounder for them this season, and he's giving you a block per game, but 3 boards, 4.5 points per contest. Rasheer Fleming, meanwhile, steal and a half, block and a half, 14 points, 9 rebounds per game. I love what he's able to bring to the table, and for Derek Simpson, he's been able to supply the team with 9 points per contest. You expected a tad bit more out of him. For St. Joe's, this defense has been hit or miss. They either have a really good day at the office or they have a really bad day at the office. There's not been a lot of in between with regards to them. For St. Joe's, they've been able to do an okay job of guarding the arc. They're allowing opponents to shoot just 32% from three-point range, but this is a College of Charleston team that on the road they're allowing opponents to shoot also just 30.5% from three-point range themselves. Do recognize that Charleston has their defensive woes, but for St. Joe's, again, are they going to give up 60 points or are they going to give up 80 points? Because there hasn't been a lot of in between with them. They're about 93rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Do think that Charleston gets this game going up and down. A semi-total at 154.5. I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to take anything north of 5 here with Charleston. 607, 608 on the betting board. Davidson, they are going to be playing us to Charlotte. Charlotte is a 9.5 to a 9-point underdog. Totals between 138.5 to a 139. Semi-line at 7.5, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Charlotte. Now for Charlotte, they have been without one of their main transfers in the offseason, Nika Mitskarishvili, who he comes on over from Louisiana Monroe. He was their top scorer last season. Not having him out there has certainly left a little bit of a void for this team, but they've been able to get through it because Robert Braswell, who's in about his 15th year of college basketball, has done a solid job at 6'8", supplying the team with 12.5 points and a 48.5% three-point shooting percentage. That has been massive. They're getting Mitskarishvili back, and Kylan Blackwell's been pretty solid in the backcourt as well. He's given the team about 6 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. He's not necessarily going to give you a lot in terms of facilitation or anything like that, but you've had a versatile big man in John Carlos Rosado be able to step up. Began his career over at Florida Atlantic, was sort of in the shadow of Vladislav Golden over the last few seasons, and it's not going to give you a ton on the glass in terms of just overall protecting the rim in terms of shot blocking, but 12.5 points, 6.5 boards, 4 assists per game. So he has been able to do a great job with that regard, and Nick Graves is shipping in there 3.5 assists. He's been able to give the team 15.5 points per game. On the Davidson side of things, it's a bunch that doesn't necessarily do the world's greatest job on the glass in terms of their ability to be able to get second chances, but they don't really give you the opportunity to be able to grab an offensive rebound as well. Davidson has been a little bit of an opportunistic defense that is 291st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've had a tough time being able to guard the arc all season long, but do have a pair of dynamo scorers in Connor Kuchera, along with Reed Bailey, supplying the team with a combined about 35.5 points per game. Bailey shooting 40% from 3. And then Bobby Durkin does shoot 41.5% from distance, 14.5 points per game. But outside these 3 players, you have nobody else that's really giving you north of 7.5 points per game. It's a very top-heavy team. Outside of these 3 guys, you don't have anyone else that gives you north of 3.5 rebounds per game. The facilitation has been pretty solid. They've only turned the ball over about 10 times per game, but this is a Davidson team that very much is a make it and take it sort of team, for lack of a better term. Now you've got a Charlotte team that traditionally has been one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball, and Davidson, they themselves, not necessarily a team that's looking to push tempo, but did still semi-total at 139.5, despite the fact that you do have a Charlotte team that, in terms of total possessions per game, they're clocking in 323rd in all of college basketball this year. Davidson, more of a mid-tempo team at 186. So here at A+, willing to take those points with Charlotte, and did semi-total 139.5, so in on the over here at 138.5 to 139. 609, 610 on the betting board. Penn State, it's the road. They're facing off against Rutgers. Rutgers is a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. Thrown on this game between 157 to 157.5. Made my line 1.5. I am not willing to lay anything more than a 1 here, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 1 with Rutgers. This is a Rutgers team that just has a very good home court advantage that I think is going to be able to elevate them to victory against a Penn State team that I've been very impressed by. Penn State is a top 50 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and Penn State, they're much improved on the glass as well. Last year, they were outside the top 3 with regards to their rebound rate. Yannick Niederhauser, he comes on over from Northern Illinois, and he has been tremendous for this team. 2 blocks, 6 boards, 13.5 points per game, and 7 feet tall. He's not going to pop threes a lot or anything like that, but does have the ability to if they also need them to. But that's it for Rutgers. Even though you do have a younger team compared to a veteran Penn State squad, I just think that Ace Bailey along with Dylan Harper are going to be enough to be able to get the job done in this one. These 2 guys are combining for 40 points per game, and the biggest key against Penn State, a team that generates so many turnovers, is being able to take care of the ball, and Rutgers has been able to do so. They're only turned the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. Steve Peichel knows how to coach defense. It has been a Rutgers defense that has fallen off the table a little bit. They're well outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but much of that is due to the schedule that they play. They play those rough games out there in lovely Las Vegas, and then you've got a guy that just does so much in Jordan Durcock, who comes on over from Merrimack, a steal and a half, 3 assists, 5 boards, 7.5 points per game. Really doesn't pop it from 3-point range, and down low, this team isn't what they were last season when they had Cliff Amarie, but Lathan Somerville has come in. He's been able to supply the team with 8 points, 4 boards. He's shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, so do like what he's able to bring to the table, and if you're able to get anything out of more of these ancillary guards like PJ Hayes and company, I do think that Rutgers has a bit of upside to be able to take down a Penn State team that has been very complete with guys like Nick Kern and company being able to step up, and Baldwin 8 assists per game, but also turning the ball over 4 times per contest as well. And Rutgers, they've been able to do a nice job of being able to generate those turnovers. I do think that this is going to be an up and down game at a 157 or less. And on the over, you do have a Rutgers team that has now given up 79 plus points in each of their last 5 games, and a Penn State team has gotten past 80 in 4 of their last 5. So I'm going to be in on that total over, and with Rutgers, I'm willing to lay up to 1 with them, / if they become a money line underdog, would be willing to take that as well. 6-11, 6-12 on the betting board. Rhode Island is on the road. They're facing off against Brown. The question is, what can Brown do for you? And if they're able to stay within the number, they'll be able to make you some money. They are a 4.5 point home underdog. Thrown on this game is 148.5. Set my line at 7. I'm going to be willing to lay with Rhode Island. I just really like what I'm seeing out of this Rhode Island team in general. They've done a great job both offensively and defensively. Sebastian Thomas, who was over at Albany last season, you were wondering if it was just a case that he was able to put up big numbers at a smaller school, but he's been able to duplicate that success here over at Rhode Island. He's given the team 16.5 points, 7.3 assists, a fewer than 2.5 turnovers per game. They're coming off of that massive win against Providence, so you do fear a little bit of a letdown spot against another team that's within the area, but David Futris is able to give you 6.5 rebounds per game. You got David Green hauling in there 6 boards per contest as well, and while they don't have as big a numbers as the 2 main guys down low for Brown, as you've got Aaron Cooley along with Landon Lewis, who will be able to supply the team with a combined about 16.5 or so rebounds per game. I do think that they're going to be able to have a little bit more size, win that battle. And then Keno Lilly Jr., he just needs to go into takeover mode for Brown. He's shooting 47% from three-point range, 20 points, 3 assists per game, and with this Brown team, they just really look to him to do a bit of everything because they've been dealing with a few injuries. Alexander Lesbert, he has been dealing with a bit of an ailment. He was one of the top scorers through the first 5 games of the season. We haven't seen him since late November, was logging for the team 11 points per game with Rhode Island's overall versatility and the way that Rhode Island has just been able to pop it from 3 themselves, shooting 39.5% from three-point range against a Brown team, of which I still have a few question marks with them because they feel a little bit top-heavy with Nana Owusu-Onane being out, despite the fact that they're actually a top 110 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per-possession basis. But this Rhode Island team, with Javonte Brown, the 7-footer coming in, has lent them even more depth than Rhode Island. They've already been able to win a few games away from home now. A lot of their success has been coming in true home games, but we've already seen them at the Jacksonville Classic be able to get the job done a few times. I do think that they do so here against the Brown team that has been pretty solid to begin the season, but they've beaten up on some lesser competition. So I'm going to be willing to lay with Rhode Island, set them as a 7-point favorite, and did set my total at a 151 as well with the way that Rhode Island has been functioning on offense, but it's also been able to execute on defense. Do you think that you get some late game fouling here for the over? So like the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Rhode Island. 6-13, 6-14 on the betting board. It is Monmouth on the road against Princeton. Princeton is a 14.5-point favorite. The last game is 146.5 to a 147, and set my number at 14. 14.5 is my minimum buy point on Monmouth, as for Monmouth, it has been a less than savory year, to say the least, for them. They do have a road win against Seton Hall, though. I guess that counts for something this season, but that's it for Princeton. Even though this is a very efficient offense, they shoot north of 80% of the free throw line. They never turn the ball over. They're 182nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and they're actually allowing about 5 more points per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road, which I do find to be very intriguing. This is a Monmouth team with one straight-up win thus far this season, but Abdi Bashir Jr. has supplied the team with 20.5 points per game. And Monmouth, it feels like they're starting to find a little bit more out of their ancillary pieces. Madison Dewar is a guy that comes in from the Citadel. He and Jack Collins have been able to combine for about 19 points per contest, combining for just under 3 steals per game. It's a Monmouth team that overall is shooting just 37% from the floor, but they shoot it relatively okay from three-point range. It's a Princeton team that's had a little bit of a tough time guarding the perimeter in recent years, and it's a very top-heavy Princeton team. Caden Pierce has been rock solid down low, some boards, 12 points. He shoots 39% from 3, and then you got a pair of guys shooting north of 40% from 3 in Xavier Lee, along with Dalen Davis. Davis a little bit more of a one-trick pony scorer with 12 points per game. Lee does it all, 15 points, 5.5 boards, 5.5 assists per game, but other than Bryce Peters, you've got really 2 other guys that give you north of 4 points per game, and that's your entire rotation. Meanwhile, you've got a Monmouth team that has been able to have a little bit more contribution down low. You've been able to get some of these guys going, as Jared Valencia missed the first 3 or so games of the season. 6'9" combo player that's giving you 8.5 points, 5.5 boards, has had a rough 3-point shooting season to start with, but last year was a darn near 40% three-point shooter. Cornelius Robinson, he's able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Princeton, one of the worst teams in all of college basketball over the last few years in terms of being able to grab offensive rebounds and being able to give themselves second chances. I think that that's going to allow a Monmouth team that has had a little bit of a tough time on the boards to be able to remain lively. It is a Monmouth team that they've been turning the ball over about 13 times per game, going up against a Princeton unit that they don't really seek out a whole bunch of steals or anything like that. And it's been a Princeton team that has been one of the lower tempo teams in all of college basketball. They're playing a bit faster this year. After last year, they were outside the top 330 with this regard, but makes it a little bit more difficult to be able to cover this big of a spread, with Princeton now being, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, more on about 115th this year, and scoring fewer points per possession at home rather than on the road. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with Monmouth, set my line at 14. I did set my total at 146. I do think that Princeton is going to be efficient with their offense, but again, I think that you get a little bit more of a slower, grimier game, especially with the Monmouth team that scored 63 or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. So in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to take those points with Princeton. 6-15, 6-16 on the betting board. Western Kentucky is going to be playing us to Tennessee State. Tennessee State, an underdog of 15 points. In your total on this game, it is 160.5. Set my line at 13.5. I'm going to be willing to take the 15 with Tennessee State. Tennessee State has been a little bit up and down thus far this season, but they've been able to really get it going with regards to their total possessions per game. Top 35 in all of college basketball. Western Kentucky was third in the country last year. They've slowed things down a little bit ever since Hank Paloma took over for Steve Lutz. As this team has been able to do a nice job down low. You've got 3 different guys give you at least 4.9 rebounds per game. Papa Carfe has been that main man, 15.5 points, about 8 rebounds per game. Enoch Colombe has been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game as well. And then additionally, you've got Tyrone Marshall, who's been able to give you about 6.5 boards per contest, and he's able to pop it from three. Though he's only shooting about 30% from three. Western Kentucky as a whole, though, further tempo, 12 turnovers per game, not too bad. They generate about 9 steals per game as well, with Don McHenry being able to do it all in the backcourt. 2 assists, 2 steals, 15 points per game. And then on the flip side, for Tennessee State, what I think is going to be able to keep them very lively, what you're able to get out of Brandon Weston, who's been able to supply the team with 17 points, 6 boards. Now, this is a Tennessee State team that's shooting just 28.5% from three-point range, but I do think that they're going to find some looks against a Western Kentucky team that, to their credit, they've been one of the better three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball over the last 2 seasons. They're a top 75 team this year in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. But for Tennessee State, I do think that they're going to be able to do an okay job on the glass with Amir Langlis being able to supply the team with 7 rebounds per game. And the guy that has really stepped up for them is Carlos Williams. Comes on over from Tulsa, 4 boards, 12 points, shooting 37% from 3 as a pretty thick-framed, I guess you call it 6'5", 6'6", do-it-all sort of player. And then additionally, Justice Jackson has been able to do all 4 assists per game. Need to cut down on the turnovers. Tennessee State has been turning the ball over about 15 times per contest, outside the top 275 in terms of ball control, but this has been a Tennessee State team that has gone to at least 74 in each of their last 5 games. Do you think that this is a little bit more of an up-and-down game? But again, Western Kentucky find themselves in the top 80 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. I think they do just enough to be able to keep this total under. Set my total at a 159.5. 160 was my buy point on the under, so in on the under, but won't take the 15 here with Tennessee State. 617, 618 on the betting board. Troy is going to be on the road against Houston. Houston does find themselves between 24.5 to 25-point favorites. Tonight's game, it is 133 to 133.5. I set my line at 27. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Houston. Troy has just had a tough time taking care of the ball outside the top 300 in terms of their total possessions that end in a turnover. That's not a place where you want to be. Houston is once again absolutely mauling on the glass. We saw what they were able to do a few days ago against Butler, as you've got Joseph Tugler along with Juwan Roberts, both giving you right around about 6 rebounds per game. Additionally, for this Houston team, they've been shooting north of 40% from three-point range. Well, I do think that that's going to tick downward a little bit. You've got a Troy unit that just hasn't been the same on defense as they have been in past years. They're still a good team at being able to generate turnovers. Top 50 team over the last 2 seasons in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis. But when they don't generate a turnover, they do leave themselves very open to giving up some wide-open looks from three-point range, as Troy right now is allowing opponents to shoot in that neighborhood about 34.5% from three-point range, 240th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Houston, we've had Michael Susan do a really good job of picking up where Jamal Shedd had this team a season ago, as he's been able to give you right around about 9 to 10 points per contest, but it's the ancillary things he's able to do. He's able to be a good defender, generate a steal plus per contest, 5 assists with fewer than 2 turnovers per game, and then LJ Cryer is a main scorer with about 15 points per game. Meanwhile, for Troy, they bring back a lot from a season ago. Miles Rigsby has been the top scorer of 14 points, 2 steals per game, and you've had Tayton Conway be able to give you darn near 3 steals per contest, 5 assists, 9.5 points per game. These are the only 2 guys on the roster that average more than 9 points per game. It's just not as deep of a team as we saw a season ago, and those 17 turnovers per game against the Houston team that just year in and year out, they've been a top 25 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis. I think that that's going to lead to very much a low-scoring game. I think that that's going to lead to the offense being a little bit more muted. So I did set my total at 133 here at the 133.5. I'm going to be in on the under. We have seen this Houston team just absolutely lay waste and dump truck teams in these bigger sort of spread games. I think that they're going to be able to do so here to a Troy team that I don't think matches up very well. I set my line at a 27. I'm going to lay with Houston, and I'm in on the under. 619, 620 on the betting board. It is Wyoming. They hit the road. They're facing off against South Dakota. South Dakota is between a pick 'em to a 1-point favorite. 157.5 to 158.5 is the total. And with Wyoming, I set them as a 4.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them outright on the money line. With this Wyoming unit, I just think that they're going to carve up a South Dakota defense that once again finds themselves well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. The South Dakota unit has been playing really up-tempo. They're a top 25 team in terms of total possessions per game, so they are very much looking to play up and down. But for Wyoming, I think that they win that battle on the glass, as right now Cameron Fens, the true 7-footer for South Dakota, is giving you 4.9 rebounds per game. He's their top rebounder. Meanwhile, Jordan Nesbitt has been a nice do-it-all sort of gadget guy for Wyoming. 11 points, 11 boards, a steal per contest. Really has not popped it very well from three-point range, and Wyoming does need to take care of the ball a little bit better. They're turning the ball over about 13.5 times per game, but as the season has went along, we've seen the turnovers become less and less problematic. This is a Wyoming team that has not gotten past 70 points in each of the last 4 games, but they've given up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5, including giving up just 70 to a Utah State team that has been a dynamo on offense this season. Meanwhile, for South Dakota, it's a tough place to travel to. You've got the Bruns brothers and Paul Bruns, who's able to give you 10 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, and Isaac Bruns gives you 14 points per game, but the team as a whole is only shooting about 32% from three-point range. They do a good job protecting the ball with only about 10.5 turnovers per game, so they've done a pretty rock-solid job there, but was expecting a little bit more this season out of Max Burchill. Hasn't necessarily taken that stride forward after the last few years. He shot north of 40% from 3 with about 6 points per contest again. Still just giving you those 6 points per game. Would like to see a little bit more out of him, and I do think that for Wyoming, being able to win that battle on the glass against a South Dakota team that just has no real way of being able to hold teams down to only one possession. Their defensive rebound rate has been one of the lesser ones in all of college basketball. And for South Dakota, let's call it what it is. They are just giving it up from three-point range as well. South Dakota, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage right now, clocking in at 294th in all of college basketball, while this Wyoming team has been able to do a pretty rock-solid job in terms of holding teams down, allowing them to shoot 29% from 3. I think that that's going to be the difference in this one. Did semi-total at 154.5. You do have a South Dakota team that's playing very frenetically, but a Wyoming team playing great defense. So in on the under, and I do like Wyoming outright on the money line. 621, 622 on the betting board. It is Tulane playing goes to Southern Miss. Southern Miss is a 5 to 5.5 point underdog. Those between 148.5 to 149. Seems as though Andre Cabello is suspended indefinitely for Southern Miss. Now, how long that indefinite suspension is going to be, we have absolutely no idea, but I did make Tulane the 8.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, and even if Andre Cabello were to play in this game, Andre Cabello, you just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him. Meanwhile, you do know a little bit more of what you're going to get out of Neftali Alvarez. He's never been really a good shooter, but he's a guy that's going to be able to play some rock-solid defense. He's going to be able to do a nice job of being able to give out some facilitation as well, about 3.5 assists per game, and I just noticed when Andre Cabello is out there on the floor for Southern Miss, this is a team that plays much more up-tempo than they do without him. Still willing to take a shot on the over, though. I said I told 152.5. Tulane has not been running as much as they have in past years. I think that they're going to look to try to get back into form a little bit more. This has been a defense that has been getting gashed, giving up 76-plus points in 3 of their last 5 games. You do have Caleb Banks, so comes over from Indiana. He's been supplying the team with 16 points, 7.5 boards, shooting 43.5% from 3. And all in all, Tulane turned the ball over just 11.5 times per contest. They shoot 35% from 3, well inside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And this has been a Southern Miss team that has been a horrible defense in general. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 233rd in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this Tulane unit, it's not like they've been amazing themselves, about 127th. You do have Dennis J. Harris. Should be able to do a solid job for Southern Miss, though. He's been able to supply them with 15 points, 9 rebounds per game. Was actually at Arkansas last season, 2 years ago. Over at Southern Miss, didn't have quite this much success, so he's come back bigger and better, but I've also got a pair of guys in Christian Watson along Kobe Montgomery, both being able to supply Southern Miss with between 10 and 11 points per game. Biggest issue for Southern Miss is just ball security. They've been turning the ball over 15 times per game, but this is a Tulane team that is well outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. DeAntoni Gordon, 9 points, 5 rebounds. That's down from what he's been able to do throughout his career as well. I do think that that's going to rise up a little bit, but I do think that with Rowan Brumba running the offense, 5 assists per game, he's been able to shoot it well from three-point range himself. And with Tulane, having a few guys just stepping up, giving you right around about 9 or so points per game like in Asher Woods, I think that that's going to be just enough for this Tulane team to be able to get the job done against a Southern Miss team that I think is going to be giving up quite a bit. I think that they're going to be looking to run a little bit more. I think that Tulane looks to get back to their up-tempo style of a season ago as well. So I set my line at 8.5, willing to lay with Tulane. I did set my total 152.5, almost in on the over. 623, 624 on the betting board. Providence is going to be on the road against DePaul. This will be a game that I write up as DePaul a 1.5 point favorite, and your total on this game is 139 to 139.5, and I did set Providence as a 4-point underdog, so I'm going to be willing to lay with DePaul, and I'm willing to write it up, because with this DePaul team, I've been very impressed by them this year. They're a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, contrary to popular belief. Somehow, someway, Providence is inside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, mainly because they've been able to get a little bit of a spark recently ever since Bryce Hopkins has come back in the fold. But even with Bryce Hopkins back, they did lose that game a few days ago against Rhode Island on the road. That was a little bit of a tough one, and this has been a Providence defense that has gone down the tubes a little bit as well. They've now given up 69 plus points for their last 5 games. They had that nice triumph against BYU, but when the team leaves the Dunkin' Donuts Center, they're just not the same team. For Providence, if you look at them overall with regards to their three-point shooting defense thus far this season. They allow opponents to shoot just 25% from three-point range at home, north of 38% on the road. They've got some of the biggest home and road splits they're going to find in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this has been a DePaul team that has been shooting darn near 39.5% from three-point range. Surprisingly, they're a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis as well, but like all these guys are able to be trigger men for the team. Jacob Myers has been leading the way with 14.5 points per game. He's been able to shoot about 46.5% from three-point range. Now, I think that's going to see a little bit of a drop-off with David Skogman. He shot north of 45% from three last season over at Davidson. He's been able to give the team 9.7 boards. He's shooting 43.5% from the outside. Connor Enright has been a really nice facilitator, 7.5 assists, shoots 40% from three-point range himself. DePaul needs to clean up those 13 turnovers per game, but this has been a Providence team that's not really forced the issue in terms of generating a lot of turnovers. You do have Jaden Pierre in the backcourt, who's been able to do a nice job giving you double figures as well. That was able to hold down the fort while Bryce Hopkins was trying to get back out there. 32 points for Hopkins in his first 2 games back, but guys like Corey Floyd, Wesley Carter, Bentley Joseph, between these 3 guys, you're getting from all of them about 3.3 to 4.5 rebounds per game. They're combining for about 30 points between the 3 of them. You just need a little bit more there. Bryce Adesonko, the true 7-footer, he's been able to give you about 5 boards and a block per contest, but I do think that in the end, DePaul does a relatively solid job on the glass, and this Providence team just has not been the same team when they've been on the road. I am going to be willing to write up and lay it here with DePaul, and I did set my total at 140 as well. This has been a Providence team that, again, their defense, not the same on the road, and DePaul, I think, is going to be able to hit some threes. So, in on the over, and I'm writing up DePaul, laying the small number. 625, 626 on the betting board. Illinois plays us Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is a 7.5 to an 8-point underdog. Total on this game between 154 to seeing a 153.5 out there as well. To set my total 147.5. I'm in on the under. This Illinois team has actually been able to play some very rock-solid defense, and for Wisconsin, they're playing a little bit more up-tempo, but when it's all said and done, when it comes to Big Ten play, typically we do see this Wisconsin team just revert to form, and I think that that's going to be happening here with Wisconsin. They've also been a team that's been able to do a little bit of a better job on defense recently as well. Still about 115th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I feel like that UT Rio Grande Valley game was a wake-up call for them. And I don't think that Illinois is going to be maintaining the number 2 defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I've been liking what I've been seeing out of them. I think that this number has gone a little bit far. I set my line at a 5.5, but you've got Tomislav Ivicic, the true 7-footer, who's able to give you 16 points, 9 boards per contest. Kasparas Jakanuskis, he's been very versatile coming over from Lithuania. Not necessarily like some sort of a fireball scorer or anything like that, but still giving you 14.5 points, 6.5 boards, 6 assists. He's been a nice edgy suffer, shooting 43% from three-point range. It's an Illinois team that, as a whole, they shoot 34% from the outside. Reason I think that Wisconsin's going to cover this number, though, is that they just do the little things well. They've been turning the ball over less than 10.5 times per contest. They're one of the best free throw shooting teams in all of college basketball as well, at 85.5% at the free throw line. Pretty much all but one guy that gives you north of 2.1 points per game, shooting above 77.5% at the free throw line, with John Tonje being able to supply the team with 21.5 points per game. He's been the main man, but you've got 4 of your top 5 scorers give you at least 4.7 rebounds per game. That includes John Blackwell, has been able to give you 15 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. And then Stephen Kroll, his overall versatility at 7 feet tall, 3 assists, 7 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Like what these guys are able to bring to the table. Xavier Amos has not necessarily giving you a ton, but I do think that with Wisconsin and Illinois, these are 2 very deep teams. We've got a Wisconsin team coming off of getting bludgeoned against Marquette. I think that they're going to be a little bit angry, and you have a Illinois team that has gotten to 87 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. I think that that was a matter of the competition rather than anything else. I think that this turns into a classic slowed down Big Ten game. Set my total 147.5 in on the under, and at 6 plus, won't take those points with Wisconsin. 627, 628 on the betting board. It is Arkansas, Michigan doing battle from MSG, and with Arkansas, they are 4.5 point underdogs. So this game is 146. This is another game that I'm going to be willing to write up, and I'm going to be writing up Arkansas with the points. As a matter of fact, I like them outright on the money line. I know that for Arkansas, it's been a little bit of a touch-and-go sort of season for them, but I think that John L. Davis, who's only been able to give the team right around about 9 or so points per contest, is going to be able to pick it up. Jonas Adu has been dealing with injuries. They're starting to get him back as well, and Big Z and his versatility, I think, is going to be able to match up with what Michigan brings to the table with what Danny Wolf has been able to provide. Danny Wolf at 7 feet tall is able to handle 12 points, 10 boards, 3 assists, shooting about 33% from three-point range. He's been tremendous, but for Michigan, again, it's all about the way that they don't take care of the ball. Outside the top 325 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, 15 per contest, with Roddy Gale, Lontre Donaldson in the backcourt, combining for about 24.5 points, 7.5 assists, but also combining for north of 4 turnovers per game. It's a Michigan team that shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, but again, with this Arkansas team, the way that they've been able to elevate on defense, being 12th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, getting Boogie Flan to be able to give you big buckets time and time again, 15 points, 5 assists for an Arkansas team that they're shooting about 36% from three. Abdou Thiero has been able to give the team 6 boards, 2 steals, 18.5 points per game. I do think that is going to take it out of this Michigan team. I still think that there's upside with DJ Wagner. Wagner has never really quite lived up to his billing that he had coming out of high school, but he's been able to give the team about 3 assists per contest. You saw versatility with Trevon Brazil as well, who's been dealing with a little bit of injury. They're starting to get him back into full form as well. I think that this Arkansas team matches up well with Michigan, and Michigan still trying to figure themselves out with so many transfers, which has led to so many turnovers. So I do like Arkansas outright on the money line here. I'm going to be writing up the points, and with regards to total, set mine at a 152. I do think that Michigan is going to be able to find a way to be able to turn things into offense, and for this Arkansas team, I think that they're going to get more and more efficient with their offense as the season goes along, scoring 75 plus each of their last 5 games. So in on the over, and I'm in on Arkansas on the money line. 629, 630 on the betting board. Cornell is going to be on the road against Cal. Cal is a 7 to 6.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 165.5 to 166. Semi-total at a 166.5. I'm going to be liking the over here. You've got a Cornell team that has been playing very up-tempo and not necessarily doing the world's greatest job on defense. For our good friends with Cornell, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 200th in all of college basketball. Cal even something to be desired here as well, 224th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and these are a pair of teams that are really looking to crank up the tempo. Cornell, they have not seen a three-point shot that they don't like, and it's a wholes greater than the sum of its parts approach with regards to this Cornell team, as you've got a lot of guys that just go out there and they give you in that neighborhood about 12 or so points per game, as Nazir Williams is right now the top scorer with 13.1 points per game. But then you have a pair of guys, Cooper Norwood, Jake Feigen, who have both been able to give you 12.9 and 13 points per game respectively. Guy Ragland has been the top rebounder with about 6.5 boards, 10.5 points per game. But I do think that for Cal, they're going to be able to control this game with getting back Javon Blackshear. Blackshear, he was missing for a few games. They now have him back in the fold, and he's been really the main guy in the backcourt. 3.5 assists, 15 points per contest, shooting north of 44% from three-point range. And then the freshman, Jeremiah Wilkerson, has stepped up in a big way. Over the last 5 games, he's given the team 16-plus points in all but one of them, currently shooting 45% from three-point range for a Cal team that needs to clean up the turnovers, about 13 per contest, but they have a deal with quite a few guys being in and out of the lineup. They've been dealing with having not out there BJ Omot, DJ Campbell, guys like this. Now that they're starting to get whole once again, and they're able to control things down low with having a pair of guys, Mehdi Sissoko, along with Joseph Allah. Joseph combining for 10.5 rebounds per game. Lou Dort has been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. I do think that Cal has enough to be able to control things down low. I do think that Cal is going to turn the ball over a little bit more than what they'd like, but Cornell's not been generating as many turnovers as they have in past years, and this is a Cal team that they themselves certainly have been getting bludgeoned on defense, 77-plus points allowed in 3 out of their last 4 games, but they have gone to at least 78 in each of their last 5 as well. Think that you get an up and down frenetic game. I'm in on the over. And with Cal, did set them as the favorite of 8.5 points, so willing to lay up to 8 there. 631, 632 on the betting board. Another game that I'm going to write up. UMKC is on the road against Portland, and Portland does find themselves between a pick'em to a 1-point underdog, and your total on this game between 145 to 145.5. I think the UMKC is the rightful favorite. They open up as the underdog, so won't take them on this pick'em line. But I did write up the under in this game. I set my total at a 139. UMKC is really looking to play slow and controlled outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, and both of these offenses just have not given you anything. Both of these teams outside the top 325 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis for UMKC. The star power is very prevalent with this team. You've got a pair of guys who have been able to give you 13-plus points per contest, and Jamar Brown along with Anderson Kopp. Kopp really stuffing the stat sheet, being able to shoot about 37.5% from three-point range, 4 boards per contest, and when Brown is out there, 7.5 rebounds per game as well. Has missed a few games due to injury. He's now back in the fold, so should be all good to go in this game, and that's a big reason why I am on UMKC. Without him, I would not be, but you've also been able to get about 10.5 points per game out of Kashim Grady. But big thing for this team has been the fact that they have been shooting 33% from 3, but their numbers are a little bit warped if you take a look at their raw stats, because they had that one game against Calvary College where they won like 119 to 19. They quite literally won that game by 100. If you look at them against D1 competition, 65 points or fewer scored in 3 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, this is a Portland team that their double overtime game against Denver has skewed their numbers as well. Outside that double overtime game, 68 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. It's a Portland unit that has Vukasa Magic, who's been able to give you 14.5 points, 4.5 boards. He only shoots about 30% from 3, but does a solid job there. Team has been turning the ball over about 14 times per game. Max McKinnon is able to give you about 9 points, 5 boards per contest, but you don't have a lot down low other than the gentleman from Australia, Austin Rapp, who's been able to give you 12.6 boards at right around 6'10", has been able to shoot 40% from 3-point range, so good versatility there. But this UMKC team has been very solid at being able to generate turnovers. Portland has had a tough time being able to take care of the ball, so I think that this is a rough matchup on both fronts, so did right up the under. I do like UMKC. I'll write on the money line. 633, 634 on the betting board. San Diego is going to be playing us a Long Beach State. Long Beach State, an underdog, 4 to 4.5 points. Total on this game is between 136.5 to 137. I did set my line at a 4.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the 4 and not a half a point more. It's a San Diego team that is very new look from a season ago. They lose 4 of their top 5 scorers. The only guy that they really return from a season ago has been one of their top rebounders, as you've been able to get in that neighborhood about 6.5, 7 rebounds per game out of Steven Jamerson, along with 8.5 points per game. But you really have only one guy that gives you north of 8.5 points per game for the team. That would be KJ Bradley. He's come up from the non-D1 level, and he's been great. 15.5 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest with a little bit over 2 steals per game. But who else is going to step up and take the load off of him a little bit more? Devin Dulke has been able to shoot it well from 3-point range, as he's been able to give you about 30+% 3-point shooting, which is not good considering the team is shooting 23.3% from 3-point range, and Dulke is the only guy in the roster shooting above 29.5% from 3-point range. But still, I'm going to be willing to lay the number because with Long Beach State, they've been outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Both of these teams relatively okay on the glass. Both of these teams very sad with their offense. You've got a pair of guys in Derek Ziviero, along with Austin Johnson for the Long Beach State team, who have been able to combine for 12 rebounds per game. And Devin Askew is the best peer scorer in this game. Former top 75 recruit of Texas and Kentucky, 17.5 points, 4 assists, 4.5 rebounds, shooting 38.5% from 3-point range. And Long Beach State as a whole, they shoot 34% from the outside. They're also sloppier with the ball. They turn the ball over 15 times per game. San Diego, about a slightly above average team in college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. With Long Beach State, they have really struggled with their defense. And for San Diego, it's been a little bit of a saving grace for them. Not to say that they have been some sort of an amazing juggernaut on defense or anything like that, but they've been able to step it up a little bit more. I think that they're going to do a nice job being able to hit the glass in this one against the Long Beach State team that has been relatively average with that regard. I think that San Diego State is going to be looking to those second and third chances, and I do think the Long Beach State saw some massive question marks on the road with they themselves being able to get going a little bit more offensively in their last 2 games against Big West play, but I do think that San Diego, behind Mr. KJ Bradley, does find a way to be able to get the job done. So did set my line at a 4.5, willing to lay up to 4 there, and did set my total at 140.5 with the way the Long Beach State has been looking a little bit better on offense recently. So in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with San Diego. This last game on the Northern Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 635, 636 on the card. It is Washington playing us Eastern Washington. Eastern Washington, a underdog of 13 to 13.5 points, and your total on this game between 147.5 to 148. Did set my line at a 9.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Eastern Washington, and I'm going to be willing to write it up. As for this Washington unit, it's been rough for them. Well outside the top 150 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They just really don't have anything in the backcourt. Great Osabor, he's been pretty great and leading the team in darn near everything. 14 points, 9 boards, 3.5 assists per game, but also 4 turnovers per game. And for Eastern Washington, this has been a team that's been well outside the top 330 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but getting back Mason Williams after he missed 5 games, that's big. He's been logging for the team 12 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. And Eastern Washington, still a pretty efficient offense, as you've been able to have Nick McLean, one of the main holdovers from a season ago, give you 4.5 boards, 4 assists, north of 12 points per contest, and Andrew Cook, well, he has been cooking. He's been able to give the team 17 points per game, shooting 38.5% from 3-point range. For Washington, they are within the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but we just saw them give up 85 points on their home floor to USC. They have been all over the place in terms of their rotations, with Lewis Coatright not necessarily giving you a lot of facilitation. As a matter of fact, outside of Great Osabor, your top facilitator has been Zoom Diallo, the freshman who's been able to give you about 2.3 assists per game. Team is shooting as collective 61% the free throw line, 30% from 3-point range. Now, I do think that this thing is going to be cranked up tempo. I do like the over again. I mentioned with Eastern Washington just how bad they have been with regards to the defensive front, and this is a Washington team that's about a mid-tempo team, about 200th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Under Dan Mons and Eastern Washington, they're still looking to run quite a bit more, about 160th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but Do you think that that's going to go northward as the season goes along? They themselves have given up 74 plus in 4 of their last 5 games. So I do think that Washington, after their last 2 games, they scored 58 and 61 respectively. They pop off here, but I do think that Eastern Washington scores enough to hold in there against the Washington team that I just really don't like what I'm seeing out of that backcourt. So writing up the points with Eastern Washington and in on the over. Now we get the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502, it is Jacksonville, and they're on the road against Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic 12.5 to 13-point favorites with a total of 153. So a total of 153.5. I do like the over for Jacksonville. They're a slow and controlled team. For Florida Atlantic, they're the exact opposite. Florida Atlantic in the top 30 in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. As a matter of fact, they're in the top 10 in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And lackadaisical on defense, they're right now outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Big reason why I set my line at 11.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Jacksonville. They've got one of the better major scorers there you're going to find in Robert McCray, guy that last year was able to supply the team with 19 plus points per contest, has been struggling a little bit with his shot, but even though you've got Baba Miller down low for Florida Atlantic, who's been able to supply the team with north of 7.5 rebounds per game, I do think that Jacksonville going to be able to do a relatively quality job on the glass. Right now, they're a top 125 team with regards to their rebound rate, and then on the flip side for Florida Atlantic, they have been getting a little bit loose with the ball. They play with a lot of possessions, but they also have a lot of dead possessions as well. Turn the ball over north of 13 times per contest. You've been able to get really good scoring out of Caleb Glenn, who's been able to give you 14 points per game, while Loveland Walker, he's been able to throw in their double figures. He's given out a little bit over 5 assists per game for a team that is shooting 37.5% from three-point range. Jacksonville a little bit stronger down low than they are on the perimeter with regards to their defense, but I do think that they're going to be able to hold in this game with McCray, along with his 16 points per game, giving you 5 boards, 5 assists per game, and it's also a unit that has been able to do a nice job of being able to get about 11 points per contest out of Zach Bell. He, along the outside, is only shooting about 30% per three-point range. You expect that to go a little bit northward, but all in all, I do think that Jacksonville is going to find just enough offense to be able to hold in this game, and Jacksonville has been a little bit of a chameleon, even though they're right at home playing more slow and controlled games. This has been a unit that has gone to at least 74 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Florida Atlantic squad that's given up 75 plus to 4 of their last 5 opponents, with the lone exception being Seton Hall. So do you think that this game turns a little bit more up and down? I'm going to take the points with Jacksonville, and here at a 153 or less in on the over. 306-503, 306-504, another game that I'll write up. Xavier is going to be playing with some Morgan State. Morgan State is a 29-point underdog. Totals between 156.5 to a 157. I'm going to be rating up the points with Morgan State. I felt like this line should have been closer to a 22.5. Now for Morgan State, is this a team that is going to be able to get the job done outright on the money line? No, but we've already seen a MEAC school in South Carolina State hold Xavier to a one-possession game. They lost that game by, I think it was either 1 or 3 points. It was an odd number, but still, you got Winston Tabbs for this Morgan State team who's been able to supply the team with 17 points per contest. Down low, they're going to have a tough time with Zach Freeman, who's been oh so versatile for Xavier. 15.5 points, 7.5 boards. Jerome Hunter, he's back at the fold as well, but Daniel Akintobi has come in. He's been able to give the team 6.5 rebounds per game, so he's been able to do a pretty solid job on the post. Was a little bit limited in the team's last game. Looked like he was dealing with a bit of an ailment against Bowling Green, but you got Will Thomas, who's been able to supply the team with 12 points per game. It's a Morgan State team that as a whole, they shoot 34.5% from 3, doing an okay job generating some turnovers as they've been able to generate about 9 steals per game. And for Xavier, this team has been held to 74 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games. Turned the ball over north of 23% of their possessions in that time span as well. Meanwhile, Morgan State, they're 40th in the country in terms of road rebound rate this season. Even though they may not have necessarily ideal size, you don't have anyone other than Akintobi who gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. They're holding in there, and Rob Lawson does a nice job doling out the ball. 3 assists, 8.5 points, fewer than 2 turnovers per game. Surprisingly, shooting north of 50% from three-point range. That should be going downward. And for Xavier, I do think that they're going to be able to get back online a bit more with their offense. You've got Davion McKnight doling out 4.5 assists, 11 points per game. It's a Xavier team that they've been turning the ball over a little bit more recently, but still a very good three-point shooting team at home, shooting 40% from the outside. They, as a collective, both home and road, shoot about 38% from 3, with Ryan Conwell leading the way, 16.5 points, shooting 44% from the outside. So it is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take those points with Morgan State. Do think that the Xavier offense gets back online though as well. So I did set my total 156.5. 157 is my drop dead buy point with regards to this total at 157 or higher. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to take the points with Morgan State. 306-505, 306-506. West Virginia plays us NC Central, and NC Central a 25.5 point underdog. Total on this game, it is a 144.5, and I set my line at 19.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with NC Central. NC Central has been ranking outside the the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Lavelle Moton, one of the better mid-major coaches that you're going to find, I think that he's going to be able to get this team playing a little bit better defensively, and we've been seeing that recently. 70 points or fewer surrendered in 3 of their last 4 games, albeit there were some non-D1 teams along the way, but Boy King is doing a nice job transforming this backcourt with 17 points, stealing out per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Team has only turned the ball over about 11.5 times per game, and NC Central still a top 50 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. West Virginia has been a top 75 team with this regard as well. West Virginia doesn't necessarily have a ton of depth. You've got a really nice starting 5 with Javon Small coming up very big, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists, 2.5 steals, 20 points per game, shooting north of 40% from 3, and then Tucker DeVries shoots 47% from the outside, 3 assists, 2 steals, 15 points per game out of him as well. But outside of Amari Hansberry, you don't necessarily have a ton down low. Eduardo Andre 3000 is a little bit of a shot blocker, but he plays a pretty sparing amount of minutes, so an NC Central team that is going to have a little bit of a tough time on the glass in most games like this. They're currently 349th in the country with regards to rebound rate. That becomes a little bit more mitigated in this sort of a game. West Virginia has been able to do a nice job of just being able to get things going at Morgantown. It's one of the tougher places in all of college basketball to play, but still they're only about 134th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Do think that NC Central can hold within this number and be able to tighten up a little bit more defensively, as they themselves about 182nd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Did set my total at a 145.5, at the 144.5, and on the over, and I'm willing to take those points with NC Central. 386-507, 386-508. It is Syracuse playing up to Albany. Albany at 12.5 point underdog with the total on this game 155.5, and set my total at 161.5. I'm going to be taking a shot on the over for Albany. They've been a little bit more of a mid-tempo team this season. After last year, they were one of the faster teams in all of college basketball, but we've seen them start to crank up that tempo a little bit more recently, while Syracuse has really been running and gunning it this season as well. Syracuse last year was one of the top teams in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. This year, they're generating only about 4 steals per game, so that has seen a massive departure there. And for Syracuse, in terms of total possessions per game, they're about 43rd in the country this season, with J.J. Starlin being that main man, being able to supply the team with 20 points per contest. Now, we've been seeing Starlin be out of the fold the last 2 games, and wouldn't doubt it if they just rest him here, and even if he does play, you probably wouldn't think they'd be at 100% for this game, but he still have plenty of scoring on this team, as you've been able to have Jair Davidson versatility coming in from Delaware, about 11 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. And Chris Bell last year shot 42% from 3. That's tapered off to about 27% this season, but still is able to give the team 12 points per game. And Syracuse, for as up-tempo they play, they're only throwing the ball over 10.5 times per game. We should see their three-point shooting go northward as well. Currently, they're shooting 26% from three-point range. Not that they're amazing from three-point range. You've got a guy like an Eddie Lampkin down low who's able to give you 7+ rebounds per game, but I do think that that'll be shooting up a little bit. And for this Albany team, they lose Sebastian Thomas in the offseason. They were dealing with a bunch of injuries towards the beginning part of the season, but their offense has been able to come along for the ride. Byron Joshua, who comes on over from Alcorn State, he's been able to give the team 13.5 points, a little bit over 3.5 assists, shooting 35% from three-point range. Albany has turned the ball over just 10.5 times per contest, and you've been able to have Demir Langford come in, give the team 10.5 points per game. Not really a guy that's going to pop it from three-point range, but for Albany, they've done a nice job being able to turn their steals into offense, as well as they've been able to generate a little bit over 10 steals per game, so they do a nice job with regards to live ball turnovers. Really not a lot down low for this team, so there's going to be lots of second and third chances we had on both sides, with Justin Neely at 6'6" is able to give you 6 boards per contest. Lone guy for Albany, that's right now, give you 4+ rebounds per game. Fully recognize that J.J. Starlin is banged up for Syracuse, but I do think that they're going to get this game going up and down. I do think that they're going to be able to dominate the boards, and I do think that Albany is looking to get back to their up-tempo style. So semi-line at 13.5, could be willing to lay the 12.5 for Syracuse, and then on the over semi-total 161.5, 36509, 36510. Another game that I'll write up with Incarnate Word on the road against Duke. Duke is a 34-point favorite. Total on this game 144. Semi-total at a 151. I do like the over. Incarnate Word has been actually a top 45 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they've also been outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I did set my line at a 33, so 34 is a buy point for me on Incarnate Word, as they bring in the Ball State backcourt from a season ago. Davion Bailey has been the main guy. He's done an incredible job of running this offense, giving you 17.5 points per game, while Jalen Anderson, he gives you 6 assists per contest. Bailey shooting 42% from three-point range, Anderson 36% from the outside. For an Incarnate Word team that they're actually a slower tempo team, but they only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest. You've been able to get some relatively solid rebounding down low as well, with being able to get 12 points, just under 6 rebounds per game out of Jordan Pike. You've been able to have Sean Robinson, one of their top scorers from a season ago, come back off of injury after he missed the first 3 or so games of the season, and he's starting to look like himself as well. He's been able to log for the team about 7 points, 2.5 boards, lends a little bit of versatility in terms of being able to pop threes. Right now shooting 62.5%. That'll be certainly falling off, especially against a Duke team that is in the top 30 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home, but Duke also a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, with having all sorts of versatility. Tyrese Proctor right now shooting 43.5% from three-point for a Duke team that overall they're shooting 35.5% from three. They have gotten to at least 84 points in all but one of their home games thus far this season offensively, despite the fact that they don't play super duper up tempo. Con Kneppel has been able to give you 3.5 assists, 12.5 points per game, while Cooper Flagg, he does it all except for really shoot it from three. He's not shot it well from three, but 17 points, 4 assists, 9 rebounds, a block and a half per contest. So, I mean, he's been able to do a great job on that front. I do think that both of these teams going to be able to get their offense working. Duke has been a rock solid defense, but I do think that Incarnate Word going to find a way to be able to sink some threes and do just enough to hold within this number. So I'm going to be willing to take the 34 with Incarnate Word, and running up the over semi-total 151. Every wrap things up with 306-5-11, 306-5-12. NC State plays us to compensate. Compensate an underdog of 33 points. Total on this game is 137. Semi-line at 32.5. 33 is my buy point on Compensate. Compensate, a bottom 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, 362nd out of 364 teams, but this is also a Compensate team that, to their credit, they're not really looking to gun it. Compensate has been one of your slower teams in all of college basketball as well, 311th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and NC State has really slowed down their tempo as well. They're down to about 263rd in the country with this regard. NC State below average with regards to their three-point shooting. I just feel like you need Michael O'Connell to be a little bit more assertive on the scoring front. He's been able to do a solid job giving an assist to turnover ratio of right around 4.5, 7.5 points per game though, so you're going to need a little bit more on that front. It has really been Jaden Taylor, his 13.5 points per game, really leading the way for NC State. They should be able to win that battle down low with Ben Middlebrooks, Brendan Huntley, Hetfield combining for about 10 rebounds per game, but Julius Ellerby, the transfer from Eastern Michigan, has actually been halfway decent for this Compensate team. 9 points, 4.5 boards. Now Compensate shoots 24.5% from three, and with their low tempo, 13.5 turnovers per game, that's pretty unacceptable. They have been able to do an okay job. I'll be able to get a little bit more here as they've been dealing with the injury to Darius Ward. Their top scorer has been averaging 12.5 points per game, but Toby Ndozi has come in. He's been able to give you 8 points per game after he spent the last 2 seasons over at Maryland Eastern Shore, shooting about 36.5% from three-point, which is very good considering you've got pretty much nobody else on the roster that's giving you much of anything from the outside. Prince Oduro, he comes in. He's been able to give the team about 4 boards per contest. Down low, Compensate is going to be completely decimated on that front, but NC State, they themselves, not necessarily the strongest team in the post compared to most Division I schools, and for this Compensate team, 57 points or fewer scored in each of their last 4 games, but defense has been looking a little bit better recently, and you've got an NC State team that they themselves have been held below 61 points in 3 out of their last 4 games, with the lone exception being an overtime game against Florida State. So I'm going to be taking a shot on the under semi-total 132.5, and at 33 plus, we'll take the points with Compensate, and that'll wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, out part of the Davidson family of podcasts. Big thanks to Tristan Freeman, who does great work over at Boston Brackets. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast. I have a 5-star review coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.